This is Thomas Quinn, The 10th Hour. Written and produced by Beryl Coops.
The ultimate short story thriller.
12 noon.
The train shuddered as it pulled out of Euston Station, its wheels groaning against the tracks like something reluctant to leave. Above ground, London dragged on, rainy, gray, indifferent. Inside, the carriage hummed with the dull murmur of strangers, none of them noticing the man in the corner seat with the faraway stare. Thomas Quinn sat by the window, coat collar turned up against the chill that lingered long after the station had vanished behind them. He looked like a man who'd misplaced a few days, stubble clinging to his jaw, shadows under his eyes, and a paper cup of coffee cooling untouched at his elbow. He hadn't taken a sip. It wasn't for drinking. It was a habit. He reached for it without thinking and paused. Something new was there. Just beneath the fold of his coat sleeve, the sharp edge of a paper corner neatly tucked. His fingers froze. He hadn't felt a thing. That meant someone had gotten close, too close. He slid it out carefully. Crisp paper, folded with precision. A single sentence written in blue ink, the handwriting clean, deliberate, almost surgical. The clock is ticking. 10 hours remain. Start where it all fell apart. No signature, no context, just one more line smaller beneath it, like an echo half-whispered. What time is it? Quinn stared at it for a long beat, his breath shallow. That question wasn't just familiar. It was embedded like shrapnel from another life. He hadn't heard it since Istanbul, since the night the game changed and the cost became permanent. The train clattered into King's Cross with a hiss of brakes and a jolt that shook the carriage. He stood slowly, the old injury waking up in his knee as he stepped onto the platform. Around him, London surged. Umbrellas blooming like dark flowers, phones glowing like lifelines, and people flowing like water in every direction. He stayed still, just for a second. Then he slipped the note into his coat pocket and limped up toward the street, the drizzle turning to rain, the city swallowing him whole once more.
1:01 p.m.
The cafe hadn't changed. Same cracked floor tiles, same threadbare cushions slumped in the corners like dozing old men. The chalkboard still claimed they had the best baklava in London, though no one had ever confirmed it. It was a place suspended in time, just like the role he used to play here. Once upon a mission, he and Alina had met at the back table, posing as lovers on holiday. They'd shared sweet tea and stale scones, eyes locked like honeymooners, while sliding dossiers across the table with their knees. That was the trick, hide the truth in plain sight. The world saw romance. It never noticed the war. Behind the counter, the same woman from years ago looked up and offered a weary smile.
"It has been a long time,"
she said, voice calm as rain. Quinn nodded.
Table in the back. Oh, and a napkin, please.
She didn't flinch. No questions. Just handed him a steaming cup and passed over the napkin, creased once down the center and ever so slightly heavier than it should have been. He sat down, peeled it open with care. Inside, a square of white paper, folded once, neat as a threat. Coordinates, scrawled in the same sharp blue ink, and beneath them that same gnawing phrase, "What time is it?" He let out a slow breath, fingers closing around the paper like it might vanish if he blinked. This wasn't random. It was precise, personal, calculated. Someone had pulled old threads and pulled them tight. The question now wasn't what, but why. Why now after all this time? And what exactly had started ticking?
2:06 p.m.
Quinn stood across from a shuttered newsagent, its faded signage curling at the edges like burned paper. The payphone beside it hung limp, half-smashed, its receiver missing. But he remembered it. Remembered threading the wiretap behind the panel, the hiss of static feeding into his earpiece, the way his pulse had synced with every word he wasn't meant to hear. The coordinates had led him here. For a reason. This was the place where it had all gone wrong. He could still see it in flashes. The order he'd given, the breach, the chaos. What was meant to be a safe house full of armed smugglers had turned out to be a refugee drop. Families. Civilians. Innocents. The sheets that came out later weren't metaphors. They were body bags. Too many. When the noise settled, his clearance had vanished. His name erased from the logs like it never existed. Not reassigned. Not reprimanded. Just gone. Now the rain picked up, a thin veil hissing off the pavement. And then from the street, a black cab pulled up to the curb. A man stepped out, mid-30s, nondescript black coat, average build, featureless face, company issue. Someone trained to pass unnoticed. He walked with purpose, then paused nearby, eyes on his phone like any commuter might. Casually, without looking at Quinn, he said,
"Excuse me, what time is it?"
Quinn didn't answer. He didn't need to. His eyes locked onto the man's.
Do I know you?
He asked. The man gave the ghost of a smile and shook his head.
No, but she does.
He stepped in close, just for a second, and slipped something into Quinn's coat pocket. A familiar weight. Then he turned and disappeared as quietly as he'd arrived, folding back into the London traffic like a page turned too quickly. Quinn stood still for a moment before pulling the new note free. This one was longer. A list of names. All of them familiar. All of them supposed to be dead. Ghosts from old missions, from even older regrets. And at the bottom, the pattern repeating, "Find the girl with the red umbrella." What time is it?
2:57 p.m.
The next few hours passed in fragments. Quinn drifted through the city like a shadow long forgotten, his path stitched together by old names and cold memories. He moved through back alleys and side doors, past shuttered pubs and derelict safe houses, places where secrets once traded hands for silence. Now all that remained were the echoes. Each name on the list led him to a different ghost. Handlers long retired, contacts he'd once trusted with his life. Most were little more than husks now. Shaky hands, roomy eyes, voices gone soft with disuse. But they remembered him, and they remembered her. Each one gave him something, a word, a number, a phrase, individually meaningless. Together it felt like code, stitched but never loose, each thread carefully placed. Someone had orchestrated this, and every one of them, without fail, left him with the same parting words. What time is it? By the fifth repetition, he no longer answered. The question had evolved. It wasn't about the hour anymore. It was a signal, ritualistic, loaded. Less about clocks, more about readiness. Like a final check before the breach, a safety sliding off just before the shot is fired.
6:02 p.m.
The rain had thickened now, falling in cold diagonal sheets across the London streets. Umbrellas bloomed like petals, bobbing and weaving in the early evening rush. Horns blared, pavement gleamed, everyone hurried, somewhere, anywhere. Quinn kept walking, watching, waiting for that telltale prickling at the base of his neck. And then he saw her. She couldn't have been more than 16. Dark coat, trainers, a bright red umbrella cutting through the gray like a flare. No one else even glanced at her. She moved directly toward him. Didn't slow, didn't look up. And as she passed, she slipped something into his coat pocket with a motion so smooth it was barely there. Quinn spun, but she was already gone, swallowed by the crowd, umbrella vanishing into a sea of black and gray. He ducked behind a pillar, heart steady, fingers quick. The item was small, metallic, familiar, a flash drive, plain, unmarked. He'd seen hundreds like it. Most were harmless, some weren't. Minutes later, he found the nearest internet cafe, one of the last of its kind, wedged between a vape shop and a Polish deli. It still smelled like cheap coffee and overheated CPUs. He paid in cash and took the station the girl had clearly intended for him. The screen flickered awake. He plugged in the drive, one file, an MP4. He clicked, and there it was. That voice, Alina.
Quinn, if you're hearing this, it means you're still alive. It also means they haven't scrubbed all the tapes yet. The bomb is real, but it's not just a bomb. They're going to erase everything. 10 years of Black Ops, off-book projects, all of it, gone. You were the only one who saw the pattern. That's why they buried you. You were never wrong. You'll find the rest beneath the station. Locker 17. And Quinn, whatever you do, don't waste time. We both know what hour it ends.
Then, silence. He sat motionless for a moment, the words lingering like smoke in his mind. Outside the cafe, traffic blurred. The city kept moving. Behind him, a child's voice piped up, high and innocent.
Mom, what time is it?
The phrase struck him like a bell. Quinn looked at the screen. Then his watch, 6:58 p.m. 3 hours left.
6:59 p.m.
Quinn stepped out of the internet cafe and into the dark. The rain had stopped, but the city glistened. Pavement slick with reflections, puddles catching the smear of passing headlights like oil on water. Neon buzzed faintly in shop windows. London looked scrubbed clean and hollowed out at the same time. The drive in his pocket was still warm, like it had more to say. He moved fast now, cutting down narrow streets and back alleys, eyes tuned to movement, ears scanning for footsteps out of sync. Once he'd known how to read a city, its pulse, its rhythm, its tremors beneath the surface. That skill hadn't dulled. Not entirely. And now it told him one thing, loud and clear: he was being followed. By the time he reached King's Cross, he looped back twice, slipped through the fringe of Camden, and left his burner phone on a bus bound for Elephant and Castle. If someone wanted to track him, they'd have to earn it. The station pulsed with Friday night life. Students laughing in clusters, office workers with loosened ties, couples moving with the aimless energy of the weekend ahead. Quinn slipped among them unnoticed, a worn coat and a limp doing most of the work. His eyes found the wall of lockers. Locker 17. Still there. But something felt wrong. Not the locker itself, something around it. A pocket of silence, an unnatural stillness that coiled in the air. A lull in the crowd noise that made the hairs on his arms rise. He didn't approach. Not yet. Instead, he stepped back, scanning the concourse, then sat on a bench with a clear sightline. 15 minutes passed. He barely moved. Then a man in a high-vis jacket wandered by. Janitor? Maintenance? Maybe. But he slowed, just enough to glance at locker 17. A casual pause, a flicker of attention, then gone. That was all Quinn needed. He rose and slipped toward the toilets, locking himself in the last stall. From the lining of his coat, he unrolled an old worn bundle, tools of a trade he thought he'd left behind. They hadn't aged, neither had the hands that gripped them. He worked fast, swapped jackets, removed an 8mm nut from the door hinge and dropped it into his left boot. The weight created a new limp, different, irregular, memorable, on purpose. He applied the false mustache with a surgeon's precision, added black-rimmed glasses heavy enough to cast shadows, ruffled his hair, bent his posture. When he stepped back into the station, he wasn't Quinn anymore. He was just another tired man, slightly out of place, slightly forgettable. And now, he was ready.
8:07 p.m.
Back at the locker, Quinn moved with purpose. The disguise held. No one glanced twice. He crouched low, scanned the lock. Just a scratch, barely visible, but he saw it. Someone had already been here. Not a break-in, not sloppiness. Just enough to say, "You're not the first." Still, the job wasn't done. He worked quickly, slipping the lock, opening the metal door with a practiced, quiet ease. Inside, behind a false panel, were two items, a thin envelope and a pouch wrapped in brown paper. The pouch felt too light to worry him. He opened it. Another flash drive, identical to the last. He turned to the envelope. On the front, in that same cold, deliberate handwriting, it was never about the bomb. And again, what time is it? Quinn stood still, letting the pieces take shape in his mind. The threat to the station, the bomb, it had been the noise, the smoke screen. A perfect distraction to draw out watchers, flood the networks with chatter, stir panic in the hive. While everyone looked up, the real danger was buried deep. Not an explosion, a deletion, a virus. He opened the envelope. Inside was a map, old, creased, but detailed. Not of the station above, but what lay beneath. The Cold War-era infrastructure, the buried labyrinth of data centers and emergency bunkers forgotten by most. Decommissioned, officially. But Quinn had learned to doubt the word official, and now it made sense. The real target wasn't physical. It was memory. Names, operations, events never acknowledged, actions that never officially took place, entire black files etched into cold servers far beneath London's surface. Wipe the data, and the people disappear with it. The past becomes vapor. The right code, deployed at the right time, could unmake it all in one clean, quiet stroke. And someone had cued the strike, remotely, silently, the kind of hit no one would see until it was already done.
9:01 p.m.
1 hour left. Quinn keyed in his old security code. To his surprise, the keypad blinked green. The door gave under pressure, its hinges groaning like something stirred from long sleep. MI5 had once used this entry during chemical threat drills, back when fear had a different shape. He hadn't walked through it in years. It smelled like damp concrete and dust. The stairwell stretched downward, swallowing light. The old emergency signage clung weakly to peeling paint, and the flickering bulbs overhead pulsed like dying stars. Every step echoed louder than it should have, until it didn't. A faint sound, a scrape behind him, then silence. Someone else was down here. He moved faster now, instincts burning to life, adrenaline surged, tight and electric. That familiar ache filled his chest. Not dread, something closer to exhilaration. This was the edge, and he had always been drawn to it. At the bottom of the stairwell, the old server room, rusted switchgear, pale green tiles, a long dead heartbeat of a different war. Yet some of the systems still blinked, faint but alive. The keypad beside the metal door was worn down to bare plastic. Quinn punched in the code. It clicked open. Inside, Terminal 3A, an updated server bank, hidden, still patched into the backbone of the mainframe. No guards, no surveillance. Why would something so dangerous be left unguarded, unless they thought no one remembered it was here? He slid in the second flash drive. The monitor flared to life. Login prompt. He typed the same credentials he'd used 5 years ago, expecting rejection. But the system paused, then accepted him. He was in. File directories unfurled across the screen like an uncoiled serpent. Names, faces, coordinates. Projects buried under so many layers even Parliament wouldn't know they'd ever existed. Operations walled off from oversight, protected by silence and time. And then he saw it. Folder, clean slate. He opened it. A countdown blinked to life. The strike was already live. He yanked the drive, jammed his own into the console, and began to work. No hesitation, no second thoughts. His fingers flew. Stop codes, overrides, layered encryption checks. He knew better than to attack it head on. The virus was expecting that, booby-trapped to erase itself if tampered with too directly. He had to be smarter, isolate the outgoing signal, cut the broadcast limb before it could reach the bone, trap the payload in a recursive loop, reroute the kill command back onto itself, turn the teeth inward before the whole thing bit down. He was almost there when a shadow slid across the glass wall outside. Quinn didn't look up.
If you're here to shoot me,
he said, fingers still moving,
at least wait until I kill the virus.
The door creaked open, footsteps, measured, heavy boots on tile. A voice, low, calm.
You were supposed to disappear.
I tried.
Quinn muttered.
It didn't take.
He hit enter. The screen stuttered, once, twice, then snapped back to life. Teamer, canceled, clean, quiet, done. He stood slowly, his breath catching in his throat, not from exhaustion, but relief. The man across from him wasn't young, mid-40s, gaunt frame, a sharp, nondescript face that refused to settle into memory. Another ghost dug up from the same shallow grave. He didn't raise a weapon, just watched him with something between disappointment and admiration.
You always had terrible timing,
the man said. Quinn managed a crooked smile.
Apparently not. 10:08 p.m.
The city hummed above him. No alarms, no explosion, no final countdown. Just trains sliding in and out of the station on coffee machines sputtering, timetables flipping. Commuters scrolling through feeds, headphones in, eyes glazed, the usual Friday night rhythm. No one knew what had almost happened beneath their feet. And that was the point. Quinn climbed the stairs alone, his coat dragged damply behind him, soaked at the hem. The limp, his real one, had returned with a vengeance. But he was upright, breathing, still here. Back in the concourse, the crowd hadn't thinned. London never really slept. It just changed masks. He moved toward the exit, brushing the handrail with calloused fingers. No one paid him any mind. Then a voice broke the current, light, soft, and familiar.
Excuse me, sir. What time is it?
He turned. It was the girl with the red umbrella. She looked up at him without fear. Just something quieter, something like relief. Quinn glanced at his watch, then back at her.
Time to stop running,
he said, and stepped out into the rain.
This was The 10th Hour, written and produced by Beryl Coops. I hope you enjoyed my short story. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. I am hoping to release a new one every week to 10 days. Everything from spy stories, mystery, thriller, humor, futuristic, fantasy, period drama, and romance. something for everyone. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up. It helps others find my channel.